For News at 1, this is Shane Kenny. Good afternoon and welcome to this specially extended programme. The headlines this Thursday lunchtime. A loyalist paramilitary ceasefire announced in Belfast this morning begins from midnight. The announcement has been warmly welcomed across the political spectrum here and in Britain. The Taoiseach has said it closes a tragic chapter in our history, and the British Prime Minister described it as another important part of the jigsaw. And in other news, the Irish parents of a baby boy who died following a fire at the family home have been remanded in custody by a court in Leeds. Now the details from Imre Kelly.
The announcement of a loyalist paramilitary ceasefire from midnight has been warmly welcomed in the north, here and in Britain. The ceasefire statement, which will apply to the Republic as well as the north, was read out at a news conference in West Belfast this morning. It said loyalists would universally halt all operational hostilities, but warned that their ceasefire was completely dependent on a cessation of all Republican violence. The SDLP, Sinn Féin, the DUP, the Ulster Unionist Party and the Alliance Party welcomed the announcement, although Dr Paisley said that whatever the paramilitaries said or did, Northern Ireland's position remained under threat. The British Prime Minister said it was extremely good news, and the Taoiseach said the decision effectively signalled the end of 25 years of violence. The Church of Ireland Primate, Dr Eames, said the development was a major step forward. With the first of 3 reports on the announcement, here's our Northern Editor, David Davenpower.
It fell to veteran loyalist Gusty Spence to read today's ceasefire announcement. Spence, a former Supreme Commander of the UVF, served life for the murder of a Catholic barman in the 60s and remained an influential figure in the paramilitary world, even though he had espoused the political approach since his release from jail. Another link with the previous generation was represented by former UDA boss Andy Tirry, present to observe the announcement in a West Belfast community centre. While the CLMC statement said the permanence of the ceasefire would be completely dependent on the IRA cessation lasting, the paramilitaries firmly resolved to respect differing views and looked forward to a new beginning, with all battles being fought out politically. They were taking this step because they were reassured that the union was now secure, they said. This ceasefire would not have come about but for the efforts of churchmen like the Reverend Roy McGee and Church of Ireland Primate Robin Eames. Reverend McGee was the link man between the Irish government and the loyalists, and the Primate too used his contacts to press home the message that the Downing Street Declaration copper-fastened the position of the North. In the wake of the IRA announcement 6 weeks ago, Belfast Lord Mayor Hugh Smith used his considerable influence with the paramilitaries to urge a ceasefire. So, with the guns of both major terror groups now silent, in the words of Robin Eames, a tremendous responsibility rests with the British government. His clear message is that the paramilitaries have made their contribution. It's now over to the politicians. David Davenpower, RTE News, Belfast.
In the Dáil, the Taoiseach described the ceasefire as the dawn of a new era. Mr Reynolds told the House he would be suggesting to all church leaders that there should be a national day of thanksgiving for peace. From Leinster House, our political correspondent, Una Cleffy.
The Taoiseach told the House he believes that just as the IRA ceasefire is permanent, so is this one. He welcomed the loyalist recognition of respect for difference and that all future battles must be political. He paid tribute to the Reverend Roy McGee and Archbishop Eames, and he promised the concerns of the loyalist community will continue to receive the attention of the government at the highest level. Telling the House that it's incumbent on all of us to ensure this opportunity is used to its full potential, the Taoiseach said the government is determined to maintain the momentum for progress. For the opposition, John Bruton said the ceasefire opened up the prospect of a new era for peace, but he called on the loyalist paramilitaries to make their ceasefire permanent and to stop their punishment shootings. The Progressive Democrats leader Mary Harney paid particular tribute to the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach and to those northern politicians who had never followed the paramilitary path, while Democratic left's Prunchis de Rossa said the loyalist ceasefire must be treated with the same caution as the IRA ceasefire.
The British Prime Minister said the announcement of the cessation of violence was extremely good news. Mr Major was talking to journalists at his party's annual conference in Bournemouth. From there, our London correspondent Brian O'Connell reports.
As the Tory party conference prepares for its Northern Ireland debate this afternoon, the mood at Bournemouth has been raised by this morning's announcement. Sir Patrick Mayhew briefed Mr Major at his hotel, and shortly afterwards the Prime Minister emerged to tell waiting reporters that a very important part of the Northern Ireland jigsaw had fallen into place. He said his government would consider the announcement in its own time and its own way before moving forward. Mr Major indicated that he may be in touch with the Taoiseach later today. However, he refused to be drawn on speculation that the British government is already working on the assumption that the IRA ceasefire is permanent. Brian O'Connell, RTE News, at the Tory party conference in Bournemouth.
Other news, the Irish parents of a baby boy who died yesterday after he was injured in a fire nearly 2 weeks ago have been remanded in custody by a court in Leeds this morning. Michael Cunningham and Amanda McKenna have been charged with manslaughter, malicious wounding and arson. From Leeds, Richard Leeming.
Amanda McKenna and Michael Cunningham were arrested on Tuesday afternoon in Pinderfields Hospital in Wakefield near Leeds while they sat by the bedsides of their 2 badly burnt children. They were both injured in a fire at the family's home in South Parkway on the Seacroft estate in Leeds 11 days ago. And yesterday morning, the eldest boy, 21-month-old Jim Cunningham, died from the injuries he'd received in the fire. This morning, Ms McKenna sat slumped in the dock wearing a blue tracksuit, and Michael Cunningham sat impassively in a black shell suit while the charges were read out. They both spoke only to confirm their names, dates of birth and addresses before listening to half an hour of legal argument between their solicitors and the prosecution. Magistrates at Leeds courts then remanded them both into custody until next Thursday, and reporting restrictions were not lifted.
The funeral has taken place in County Meath of 21-year-old Bernadette O'Neill, who was shot dead at her family's farm at Freffens near Trim on Monday. Mourners at the funeral mass were told that Miss O'Neill's family had asked for the prayers and sympathy of the community to be extended to the family of her former boyfriend, Declan Lee. The weather forecast dry with good sunny spells in most areas as mist and fog patches continue to clear. Highest temperatures 15 to 17 degrees. And that's it from me. Shane.
Thanks, Emer. And in this special extended programme, the dawn of a new era, says the Taoiseach, as the Loyalist paramilitaries declare a ceasefire. We'll hear from the historic news conference in Belfast and talk to the man who made the announcement, Gusty Spence, himself a former gunman. The Taoiseach will join us live in studio. I'll also be talking to Northern Minister Michael Ancram live from the Tory conference in Eastbourne. We'll also hear from the Unionist politicians, including Ken McGuinness, John Hume, the SDLP leader, and Martin McGuinness of Sinn Féin, all after this break. Welcome back to the programme. It was 9 o'clock this morning in a crowded community hall in the deeply loyalist Glencairn estate in North Belfast that the well-heralded but still dramatic announcement was made. The loyalist paramilitaries, the UFF, the UVF and the Red Hand Commando declared a universal ceasefire from midnight tonight, the permanence of which will be completely dependent on the continuing cessation of all nationalist and republican violence. They said they had been given constitutional guarantees and the Union was safe, and they went on to offer abject and true remorse to the innocent victims of the past 25 years. This is how former paramilitary leader Gusty Spence, now speaking for the Progressive Unionist Party, made the definitive news known.
Combined Loyalist Military Command, consisting of the Red Hand Commando, the Ulster Defence Association and the Ulster Volunteer Force. After a widespread consultative process initiated by representations from the Ulster Democratic and Progressive Unionist parties, and after having received confirmation and guarantees in relation to Northern Ireland's constitutional position within the United Kingdom, as well as other assurances, and in the belief that the democratically expressed wishes of the greater number of people in Northern Ireland will be respected and upheld, the Combined Loyalist Military Command will universally cease all operational hostilities as from 12 midnight on Thursday, the 13th of October, 1994. The permanence of our ceasefire will be completely dependent upon the continued cessation of all nationalist republican violence. The sole responsibility for a return to war lies with them. In the genuine hope that this peace will be permanent, we take the opportunity to pay homage to all our fighters, commandos and volunteers who have paid the supreme sacrifice. They did not die in vain. The Union is safe. In all sincerity, we offer to the loved ones of all innocent victims over the past 25 years abject and true remorse. No words of ours will compensate for the intolerable suffering they have undergone during this conflict. Let us firmly resolve, therefore, to respect our differing views of freedom, culture and aspiration, and never again permit our political circumstances to degenerate into bloody warfare.
And that was Gusty Spence, now speaking for the Progressive Unionist Party. Well, Gary McMichael, who is speaking on behalf of the Ulster Democratic Party, gave the background to the decision by the paramilitaries to call this ceasefire.
We now find ourselves on the verge of a new beginning. After 25 years of savage conflict, the people of Northern Ireland can look toward a brighter future in the knowledge that their position is secure and that the future lies firmly in their hands. It would appear that we have come full circle in Anglo-Irish and North-South relations. It is somewhat ironic that we seem to be starting from the point when in 1925 it was agreed between the governments of the UK, Northern Ireland and the Republic that the people of both states on this island had the right to exercise their self-determination respectively. While this is a time for looking forward, it must be remembered that it was Dublin who reneged on that 1925 agreement by adopting their 1937 constitution, and it has been John Hume and the SDLP who have had to reject their previous position to now endorse the principle of consent. The situation has changed only because the SDLP, Dublin and Sinn Féin now accept the legitimacy of the Northern Ireland state, and Westminster appears willing to grant the people of Northern Ireland full and equal citizenship. If we are to find a true and lasting peace in our country, we must share the responsibility of the past and meet the challenge of the future. If we are to have any hope of establishing a lasting peace, we must recognise and respect the diversity of the two traditions in any future structures, finding peace through consensus. Today represents the first tentative step towards a new and better Northern Ireland, a land that is fit for its people.
And that was Gary McMichael of the Ulster Democratic Party at that historic news conference in Belfast this morning. Well, I'm joined in studio now by the Taoiseach, Albert Rounds. You're very welcome, Taoiseach.
Thanks, Jay.
You said today in the Dáil that this was the dawn of a new era and we now had to consolidate a just and lasting peace. You obviously feel that we are turning a new page.
No, I've no doubt about it. The 31st of August announcement by the IRA of them turning their back on violence for good, and this statement today with the loyalist paramilitaries turning their back on violence for good opens up a whole new era of peace for this island, and it's up to both governments and everybody now to move forward, to consolidate it, to cement it, and to work out a new just and lasting settlement that will respect the difference and diversity of both communities, and that will allow people and ordinary families in Northern Ireland to return to normality in life. Some of them have never known it. Some their children born 20, 25 years ago have never seen anything, only a wartime situation. So it's a whole new lease of life, a release of new energy indeed into the two communities there, and I believe we can go forward with confidence from today.
And what do you think were the last-minute elements which went together to convince the loyalist paramilitaries that they should call a ceasefire?
Well, they have been debating this for quite some time, and both the Taoiseach and I have used our contacts into that community to try and help and support and encourage the people who were working for peace, such as the Reverend Roy McGee, such as Archbishop Eames, and indeed many, many others that remain nameless. And they want to remain nameless. Everybody indeed got together to try and bring both communities away from violence and towards the democratic process. So that I think the last decision made by John Major and Sir Patrick Mayhew to allow discussions to take place with the prisoners, I'd say, was vital in the final stages of the debate within the loyalist paramilitary groups, because that's important to know what the prisoners feel and how they view it, and their support, I think, is vital to the final decision to cease violence, and as they say themselves, that all future battles will be political battles fought within the democratic process. That's a tremendous statement coming from them.